Okay, I think we're ready to get started. There'll be more time to socialize at the end, so look forward to that. All right, so welcome to the first Saturday Tech Support for coders, startups, and the tech curious. I am Mike Biesterfeld. I have been a resident of Lawrence for over 20 years. I've been doing software engineering for almost 15 years. I started at Allen Press, which is not exactly the most prestigious place to start, but is pretty famous locally, especially now that they tore down the building on New Hampshire. I've also worked for companies like Cisco, Ford, and Pods.com. The reason for this meetup, is I have an organization that I've been trying to start up called HackDoco. And the entire point of this is to get people making things. So the tagline is make something great. And the first step to making something great is to make something not so great and improve on it. So the point of this is to have some tech-focused meetups where we come together, we'll have some lightning talks, we'll have a little bit of socialization, and we'll have an open forum where you can ask any questions you want, and hopefully there's somebody here who knows the answer, somebody who can help mentor, things like that. The organization, I really want it to be all ages. I have plans to do things with kids as well. There's an organization called Girls Who Code, small pocket organization done at one school. My idea is let's combine lots of those little groups and let's build some bigger events like something like this. Ellen Kearns of the library has helped me facilitate this. She got us this space, helped us get everything set up, done advertising on the library event calendar. Ellen is the adult education librarian here. She has a master's degree from Emporia in library and information science, and she's also a occupational therapist assistant at LMH.
Occasionally. I work like once a month there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick, some other things that are coming up. There's the Lawrence Tech Guild. If you've never heard of this, it's a kind of a social group for tech people in Lawrence. We get together once a month, usually at a bar, somewhere we can have some appetizers and drinks. The next one is November 21st, 5:30 at Johnny's West. If you're not a member of the Tech Guild, we've got a QR code here. You can scan that, and that'll take you to their LinkedIn page. The library also has First Friday Coffee and Co-working. There was one yesterday.
Yes, we had therapy dogs here, and it was great. We plan to have therapy dogs in February as well.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. So that is 1 month, 30 days from now, December 6th, 10 a.m. to 1, and then we will also have another one of these meetings on the first Saturday, which is the 7th, the day after that. So today we have approximately 15-minute talks. After each talk, we'll have some time for QA. You have any questions for the speakers? We've left enough time here that after we're done, we have an open forum where if there's something you want to show, you can come plug in and show it. If you have a question, you can raise it to the group, and hopefully somebody's around who can answer it. But also, all the library resources are available to us. So if you, for some reason, want to talk to one person, you want to go grab a space upstairs, you can do that too. So the whole idea is, this open forum is you can ask pretty much any question you want, right? I don't understand React states, what the AA linked list, how to restore a production database after I deleted the whole thing. Hopefully you're not waiting for this meeting to ask that question so you can go fix it. Ask that before it happens.
I know the answer to all of these questions.
Okay.
It depends.
But then also, there's also entrepreneurship bent, business side of it, right? Like, how do I pay someone who's 1099? Who knows what it means to be 1099? Yeah. So 1099 is basically contract work. You're not W-2 employee, you're not on a payroll, you're not getting benefits, things like that. There are people in this community who can help you do things like that as well. So how can you help spread the word? These videos are going to show up on the library YouTube page, so you can go back and view them, share them with your friends. You can give a talk. We're pretty open on the topics. Anything you want to talk about, something you just learned, some product you built, really anything tech-focused. You can suggest topics that you want covered. Maybe something you don't know but you do want covered, like I want to learn the basics of JavaScript or something like that. And the last thing is I'll have a survey up at the end, QR code for you to scan. You can go answer some questions, and yeah, that's it. So that's the survey link. I'll pull it back up at the end of the meeting. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, Kyle is going to get set up. While he's doing that, I am going to ask you to grab your phone and pull it out and start sending a message to one of your loved ones. Don't type anything yet. And pull up your emoji keyboard. And I want to go around the room, say your name, and say what your most used emoji is. Okay? So I'm Mike. I'm here because I'm running this meeting. And my top emoji is the thumbs up.
My most, I don't know if this is my most used, but my recently used ones are the face where he's like, and then the other guy who's like, I don't know. So hi everybody, I'm Kyle Johnson. I'm a co-founder of Douglas County Core and also a tech entrepreneur. I helped start Core because as a local tech entrepreneur, I realized how difficult that is and that a lot of different programs are needed in order to make that easier. So my company is called Bixy, and basically we turn ads into interactive, basically mini websites that are much more effective in driving users through marketing funnels. So instead of just a banner ad, there's a lot of interactive elements to that. It's, again, more like a mini website that lives inside of an iframe that takes the place of a traditional display ad. So this fits into like ad tech, consumer internet, big data, MarTech. And so again, in building that, I realized, wow, we're kind of missing a lot of pieces locally that tech entrepreneurs need. And after the pandemic, a group of people got together, and since the pain was essentially, or was very acute with entrepreneurs, just after the pandemic, a lot of local businesses struggling, there became a groundswell of a community conversation to go build our local entrepreneurial ecosystem. So a little bit about Core and then about Launchpad, an event we recently had with Hackdoco and Mike here. So businesses, relatively new businesses account for nearly all net new job creation, and new companies flourish in ecosystems where there's a lot of different programming, but you can't just do one thing. You have to do a lot of things. So our ingredients here are big quarterly events, training, the hub, which is like an ongoing, basically entrepreneur roundtable, one-on-one mentoring, monthly programming, financing. Events like this are essential. Have to have a lot of events that bring different kinds of people together. Essentially, what this looks like is an event like Launchpad that we had several weeks ago, creates new companies and then drives entrepreneurs and tech workers and other folks into the hub where we can help them with training and basically learn how to become an entrepreneur and then push them into mentoring. And so then ultimately this will culminate in an annual pitch competition. So what this looks like from an entrepreneur's perspective is there's a particular life cycle that you have to go through if you're going to be a tech entrepreneur. Basically creating a new company, getting a proof of concept to market, getting customer feedback and validation, and so on and so forth. And we need to teach this process at scale. So our objective is to basically annually create 20 new ideas, some of which get proof of concept capital and so on and so forth, so that by year 5, basically we have one growth stage company per year coming off the assembly line and creating interesting stuff and high-paying jobs. And if we do that a lot, over a 15-year period, that'll add 1,600 jobs and over $1 billion to the economy. So this is a way to not only make cool stuff, but grow the economy. And so we're working with the city, county, state, a lot of partners around the state. Actually, K-State is one of our main funders at the moment, along with the city of Lawrence. If I didn't mention, we're a nonprofit. So we recently had this Launchpad event. So we had two years worth of pitch competitions. And we decided, okay, this has been a success. We had 9 non-tech, 9 tech companies pitch in the spring and April. And we were like, okay, this is a great success. Now we need to back up earlier in the year. So we had a pitch competition in Q2. Now we need to back up earlier in the year and start creating idea stage companies and training them so that they're very well prepared by the time that pitch competition comes around. So then we had the idea, like, why don't we have this Launchpad event? And then Mike and I got introduced to each other, him more from a coder perspective, me more from an entrepreneur perspective. We're like, why don't we put a hackathon and a startup weekend together so that we're making pitch decks and prototypes all in one weekend? And it went really well. We had 10 teams basically work together and make stuff, and then all day on Saturday and into Sunday, and then present on Sunday. And this was at KU Innovation Park. And again, just a bunch of great presentations and interesting work happened. And so then my hope for what comes next is that then over the next 6 months, these folks are getting a lot of training, mentoring. They're meeting here every other week at the hub. And by the time the pitch competition rolls around in April, we've got a lot of fundable, serious, great. These guys have been poked and prodded enough now that we can get sophisticated investors and other folks in the room to say, that's actually really good and fundable at the pre-seed level. So let's see. So the agenda for that was basically some training on Friday afternoon, and then some kind of networking and team formation, and then working all day on Saturday, and then presentation and awards. And we handed out $15,000 in prizes across 6 teams. So we have a thesis that if you sprinkle a little bit of money around and give people micro grants, you're going to get people to show up, and then you're going to give them some walking around money, if you will, to help get their business going. And that has proven to be true with the pitch competition, so then we're creating more of these kinds of events. What else should I cover, Mike?
Could we talk about some of the pitches that we had?
Yeah. So Stats Draft is a really interesting take on fantasy sports. Instead of drafting individual players who are almost always not in the postseason, let's say that you have recruited you've drafted a team. Well, 90% of the teams are knocked out in the postseason, so you can't play fantasy sports in the postseason. Stats Draft, instead, you draft statistics like yards after catch or penalty yards and stuff like that, which are obviously still in play in the postseason and make for, I think, probably a more educational model, because then it's teaching their users what goes into producing a win, as opposed to like, well, I just got the best quarterback and he's carrying the team. So Stats Draft is really cool. Externity is essentially a way to help freshmen and sophomore students get computer science, mostly internships at KU. It's not Launchpad. His company's called Hardin. But he made a DJing game. He uses like Nintendo 64 controllers and turns DJing into a little game, and it's awesome. Hardin is really super cool. So it's part software startup, part hardware startup, part DJing as a lifestyle startup. So At Home is basically helping baby boomers, the elderly transition into their next stage of life, and also possibly their kids, who are helping them find another home and downsize their home or switch homes. There's a lot that goes into like selling a house. And especially in like a time of crisis, if somebody's sick or something like that, that can add a whole lot of extra pain. Authentia is AI-enabled kind of anti-cheating, if you will. Like instead of like using ChatGPT to write my college paper, Authentia can determine if ChatGPT or something like it wrote the paper, and then basically make sure that people are actually learning instead of just learning how to use AI. Resonate Pictures makes like film quality training. So instead of like the cringeworthy, boring corporate training films, these are like cinematic level stuff. And they're creating a platform for this. So kind of like Netflix masterclass corporate training mashup. Marketo, which Rizwan was a part of, they pronounce it Market O. And I told them that Marketo is a big ad tech, or a big. It's all right, but yeah. But they made a mashup, like kind of like a, if you're a small to medium-sized business, figuring out how to market your company is very daunting. We're in a fragmented marketing ecosystem. What the heck should I do? Where should I start? And so you can just enter the website of your company, and it very quickly basically crawls your website and comes up with marketing strategies, which as a person in ad tech and martech, I know that, most SMB owners and even a lot of massive companies have no idea what to do. So they just kind of try a little bit of everything. And you can waste a lot of time and money trying all the wrong things. So I thought that was a good little mashup. This is a ride-sharing application, but they are changing the fee structure. So it's like Uber, but with a different economic model. And then Nate Clark created you can basically upload your GitHub commits, and it creates a vinyl recording of what that does. So you get like a record, but it's based on your GitHub commits for a particular project. So you have like a physical rendering of your software development process. And then Balance-Centric is like a vestibular, which basically means balance, training software and app for medical centers like LMH or whatever, for example. John works at LMH. And apparently, a lot of times these conditions are misdiagnosed, which leads to a whole bunch of extra MRIs that nobody ever needed, and they could have identified the right thing using just a sheet of paper in like 5 minutes. But instead, they go and spend, I don't know, however many thousands of dollars running the wrong scans. So that's a lot of cool stuff happening just in one weekend. If we do this, so now we're going to do this again in February because we need 20 idea stage companies a year, and we got 10. So if we just do this again, hopefully next time with more tech talent, we wanted to market the thing, but we also weren't concerned about having the biggest event because it was the first time that we were having it. So let's just try to have it, figure it out. I think we learned a lot. I think it was really successful for the first time having it, but now we've learned a lot about how to have an even more successful second event. So that second event will be in early to mid-February, I think. And Hackdoco was, Mike and I worked hand in hand in pulling this off, along with some other great folks. And we, Phil and others were mentors. So we had the companies, and we also brought in mentors in kind of product design and entrepreneurship and other kinds of things, software development. So it's our feeling in general that if you get idea stage and early stage entrepreneurs with tech talent and mentors, not only can you create cool products, but you can turn them into companies. Any questions? All right. Thanks, guys.
So since most of you already know this, this is a kind of talk idea that I have had for a while. This would be like a miniature talk. So for those of you who already know this, take notes on what I should do if I do this again. And for those of you who are new to this, you can play along. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about getting started with Git and GitHub. So Git is the version control system. There used to be other options like Subversion. I don't know what Mike taught me. Something weird. Now Git is the only thing people use. It'd be very rare and out there to use anything else. The basic kind of big picture idea is that you have these repositories of project code and many people participate in that, or perhaps just one person, but you sort of have a repository and then you have local development environments. GitHub is a web-based platform for Git that hosts your private projects. So you can use GitHub to have projects that are just for your company or just for you and a couple people, or you can have public projects that are open copyright. And then GitHub has some other kind of little features too, which I'll talk a little bit about. So super basic Git terms. A main project is called a repository. You'll hear that called repo. To get a repository of code on your computer, you will clone a copy. To do any work on a piece of code, you'll create a branch. Usually people work in single branches. If you're using Git from the command line, you'll do some add file stuff to add the files that you're changing. When you have the files ready that you're ready to do something with and to show to other people, you'll make a commit. And then when all of your kind of stuff, you might have several commits, you'll push those files to the upstream repository. And then when you're ready to make your code part of the full repository, you'll merge that code. And the thing that does that is called a pull request. And you'll hear that called PRs when people are talking about all their PRs. So there's a bunch of different ways to use Git. You can use it directly through the command line. If you went to CS school, this is probably what you learned how to do. If you're Mike and Frank, I'm sure you're very familiar with command line Git tools. I am not, and I don't want to live in the command line. And if I do anything other than brew install software and start a local development environment in command line, something has gone terribly wrong in my day. I don't want to deal with any of it. If you're working in an organization that has like an IDE and you're all in, like we're kind of all in on VS Code right now, like all of our tool chains are all tied to like VS Code extensions. There's a bunch of ways to integrate Git into your little IDE. I'm a huge fan of GUI tools, so I use GitHub Desktop. GitHub Desktop is an app, and if anyone's curious, I'll show you like a little demo of how I use it. You can actually use GitHub itself if all you want to do is like change documentation. You can literally just make your own little fork and start changing stuff and make a pull request in GitHub. The cool thing about GitHub Desktop is that it works for projects that aren't in GitHub. So if you're working in a code repo that's Git based, which I do a lot of like community work in Postgres, which the software is very new, but the infrastructure is very old. And their stuff runs like 1997, and they have like everything's in like these private hosted Git repos, which it's like a whole pain to access, but GitHub Desktop makes it really easy to like see what you're doing. So big picture GitHub terms for anybody who's kind of looking at GitHub, every project has a README file that will tell you how to run a project, what's inside the project, why the person built it. The README is the landing page of GitHub. If you download the code, it'll come packaged as a README file. Every public code repo on GitHub has a license and a copyright. If you're going to do stuff with projects, make sure you read that. GitHub takes a lot of tracking on dates. So if you're looking for something, make sure it's been updated recently, or if, especially if you're going to run it or build something for a client. You can talk to other people, like the project maintainers, in an issues list. Not all projects have issues lists, but most of them do. You can star a project in GitHub to sort of indicate this is a favorite project or this project runs. Stars are generally an indication that this is something you could use in a project, right? If it has 5 stars, it probably means no one's using it. If it has a couple thousand stars, good chance that this is a solid piece of software you could build from or integrate however you want. You'll probably need to set up a GPG key if you're getting started for the first time, especially if you're a non-technical person. That's a little hiccup, but is something you can overcome. GitHub lets you share flat text files by a URL with a system called gist files. I use that a lot. It's super helpful and is really not a code repo. It's just more like a flat file. And then you have an individual profile in GitHub. So if you're curious about who built a project, you can get information about people or share information about yourself through your GitHub profile. So a couple things that you can do with GitHub. Most of you guys know this stuff, but for non-technical audiences or people just getting started, if you cannot install a software, like if a project isn't big enough that it doesn't have a website where you go and install it, or it doesn't have a brew install command, you can download software from GitHub and that software will run on your machine as it was intended. So first of all, it's a repository for just software that you want to run. You can also download and participate in software projects that you want to participate in and build stuff in. You can create your own projects in GitHub. My 16-year-old has like 45 repos. Like last time I looked, nobody else has access to them. I have no idea what he's doing with them. He has a lot of projects in there. And then the thing that I've been having a lot of fun with in the last couple of years is just using GitHub to find like sample projects. So, a lot of the work that I do like for my day job is kind of like I do a lot of sample building and I do kind of a lot of experimentation. And there's a lot of stuff in GitHub where people have put together like a bunch of different stuff, right? And they might have a Django app that has like geospatial in it and it has Postgres behind it, and they put a data seed file in GitHub. And like, if you really take some time and like dig into some of these GitHub samples, like you can find some whole sample projects that you can kind of make your own and then kind of mess around with. So I've had a lot of fun kind of messing around with these like people that have just built whole projects that have a lot of components and then put them on GitHub. I made a diagram because that's the way that my brain works. So like a lot of the stuff that I've already been talking about, right, is that you're going to start in GitHub. You're going to have your whatever, your sample projects, your software. You're going to download that from GitHub into your local repo. And then you're going to build that in your local development environment, right? There'll be instructions in that README file on how to create that development environment. And then if you're making changes to those files, like for your job or for whatever you're trying to do, you'll get those committed and then pushed back into GitHub. And then that'll just be like your full cycle of kind of software development. And the last thing I just wanted to say is that I've learned in the last 5 years as I've been learning a bunch of stuff about Git is that all the projects are different. And so if you start a new project at your job or you want to work with some coworkers or whatever, everybody has slightly different ways that they handle things. And talking about how people are doing things is always a good idea at the beginning. I'm a part of a bunch of projects where you can push right into the main branch and any commit that you do, you just push right in. And then I'm a part of several larger repositories where there's lots of approval processes and things that you have to go through to kind of get things done. If you're getting into the advanced world of GitHub, there's lots of things that GitHub has to make your development projects work easier. We take a lot of advantage of GitHub Actions, where GitHub itself will build you little staging apps. We have GitHub do lighthouse checks on all of our code to run the Google Lighthouse, just so we can make sure we're not doing anything that wouldn't be a good user experience. And then just kind of the other little details about, if people want to have, huge branches, tiny branches, little commits, big commits, that's a little bit of different kind of flavors that people have when they use GitHub. Yeah, that's what I have. I'm on every social media now as SQL is. So if you'd like to find me, that's where I am. I'll take some questions about Git or databases, which is what I normally talk about, but today I took a little journey into side quests, version management, yeah. Everybody knew all this stuff? Did anybody not know this stuff? Okay. And do you think do you have any desire to try it now?
I've been intending to stand something up. This will help me get started.
You were going to show.
I can do a little sample of kind of how my GitHub desktop stuff works and how I use it, which if you're a command line person, you can blind your eyes or whatever. So here are all the repos that I use to participate in different projects, and some of these are just software and some of these are bigger pieces. So to create, let's say I want to I do a lot of work for some projects. I make a new branch. One thing that I do is I always name all of my branches with my name. I don't know if other people do that. That's what I do. But I would just say I'm adding doc 1, and then I just create a branch. And then it'll ask me, you've been working in a branch before. Do you want to leave that on? And then I'll just say I'm going to leave my changes on that other branch. And this is a branch that has nothing in it, right? And so then if I want to, whatever I want to do in this code repository, I could make my changes. And then I'm trying to see, I don't know that I have anything I have committed and not pushed. But you would basically be able to see a summary of things that you've done. It looks like everything. It was Friday yesterday, so I don't have any unpushed changes. Normally, I would have several things on this left side that are a bunch of changes that haven't pushed. But basically, you'd do whatever you want in your stuff and then push your changes up. But to clone a repo from GitHub Desktop, you just basically do clone repo and then just put the URL in. So then you're just that's it. But there's a lot of things that it does. And then to get new code for any project, this is my main work project, and you just pull the repository every day so that you have everybody else's changes. Any other questions? Does that make sense?
Does anyone else
I think it's pretty popular. I think it's popular for people like me who I consider myself like more tech adjacent. Like I'm not really a developer, right? But like all of the people I'm working with are developers and all the projects I'm working in are in GitHub, right? Like we don't have CMSs, like none of our, like I can't, like I'm in charge of our front end website, right? Like I'm really a marketing person, but like really my job is to like write marketing content, but like I don't have a CMS, right? So I have to like make a pull request to change our homepage or to like add content. And this is a more common world, I think, like, and I do all of our documentation and I have to do all of our documentation in this manner, right? So, but I don't have a lot of tech skills. Like I'm not a web developer, but I can do the documentation this way. I can show you our docs. Like, do you want to?
Asset management and stuff in here as well, version control there.
Yeah. And it depends on like the project, like our big front end web app. I don't load assets through GitHub. We use Cloudflare just so they're a lot faster, and like big images, like big videos, like I don't. Also, GitHub has some weird size limits with items. So if you put a big video in through your GitHub, like you have to do some fancy stuff to bypass the version control because it's storing every copy, right? It's a version control system. So if you have like a, whatever, like, a 15 gig video or something, like you don't want to put that in GitHub. So some of the asset management, depending on what you've got, you'll want to bypass and maybe do some other quicker things. I don't know. Frank probably knows. You build a lot more web apps than I do. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, if it's some of the large files, you tend to use some sort of CDN, Amazon S3, Cloudflare, or something like that, and not store it in GitHub.
Yeah, okay.
But it can, for lightweight assets, it can.
Yeah, your logo and
Yeah,
that kind
okay.
of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
But like, for example, like here's a doc file, right, for some of the docs that, I work in, and I'm gonna just like test a change, and I'm gonna save this file. And now in my GitHub desktop, it shows me what I've changed. So the reason I like GitHub desktop and not Git and some of the other like IDE tools is that for me, this is a really good check. If you do this you can do all of this stuff in VS Code, right? Like you can tell VS Code, like include these files and commit this file, but like for whatever reason, like this works for me. And like you basically, it'll show you what you're deleting, what you're changing, and then it'll list all your files, and then you'll make your little commit, like here's my commit, you'll commit it, and then when you're done, you'll push it and make a pull request. So for people who are non-technical, like not writing front-end web app code every day, like GitHub Desktop can really like help you work with developers in a way that like would be difficult, I think, any other way. Does that make sense? Cool. All right.
You can use GitHub all you want. Like you can pretty much upload anything you want to. It doesn't have to be code. I've got a repository of team building exercises, right? So it's all just text files.
Yeah, I've got a reference repository of just called Git commands that I use on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, like you just made a README or whatever and like just
Yeah,
put a
so
bunch of
I
stuff.
have a tool called reference.
Okay, yeah. There's some good stuff out there.
GitHub has an issue tracking system for like bugs and stuff in your software. I have a private one with a GitHub action that generates an issue for each of my clients that I need to build and assigns me, so like it's my reminder, and it gives me all the information that's special about that customer. Like I need to use this PO number, and I need to make sure also to send it to Stacy and that kind of stuff that I screw up every month. And it just automatically creates GitHub issues, and it's just all, that action runs on the 28th of the month and generates these as due dates for the 1st of the next month. So I don't have to think about February.
Do you have GitHub issues tied to some other project management software? No, you just use GitHub Actions as your like.
The GitHub action kicks off a little bit of Python that reads a JSON file of who I need to build.
Oh, I see.
And then
I see.
creates
Oh,
the
okay.
issues and assigns them to me so that it's in my
Yeah.
stream of all the other crap I have to do during the month. And then if I forget, because I've had situations where like I invoice a customer on Friday, and then on Monday, I need to invoice that customer, and I send him a second one because I'm just an idiot. And this way I can check it off, and I know that I did that. And,
Yeah.
You know.
Cool. Anybody have any other good GitHub gems that they've figured out, like things they're doing? Ours, we use Linear as like our project tracking stuff, which I don't really like because we just use Notion for a bunch of stuff, and I really prefer Notion now. But everyone else wants to use Linear, and Linear will, like, you can just you just give Linear your branch names, and then, you know, once your branches merged, like Linear will just close your tickets for you.
You can sort of do that with GitHub. So if
Yeah.
the issue gets a number,
Yes.
and if you put fixes number in your commit message, it'll auto close the issue when the PR gets merged.
Yeah. The GitHub action, like create a test version of your app thing, is like, for me, like that's a huge asset. You guys do all that stuff with everything, yeah. And what's is that like a little EC2 instance? Like what do you tie GitHub Actions to make your little servers?
It depends on the customer, but for the most part, what we do is the tests run in CI. If the tests pass, we build a Docker image.
That's what we
push
do.
a Docker image.
Okay.
And then we have something watching the Docker repository for new images, and when it sees a new image, it auto deploys to the dev site. So they're actually
Okay.
there's not
Okay.
even
So-
any authentication
okay.
between the two.
Yeah,
of them.
because we're using like Heroku stuff, and ours just makes like a
Yeah.
whole
Yep.
brand new, fresh Heroku app.
Yeah.
I just started working on a project that's using the GitHub like web hosting thing. What's that called?
GitHub Pages.
GitHub Pages, right? Where you just like now we're using GitHub to host the website, and we're using GitHub to do it, and that's been working great because some of the like older projects that I've been involved with, like just even getting like the web hosting stuff situated is always tricky, right? Like somebody probably has access to DNS, but man, in between there's a lot of question marks about who's controlling this stuff, especially in these like community run projects.
Oh
that,
yeah, and big community. Like I was involved with a client that
Yeah.
they were having to wrestle the DNS away from some guy's estate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Well, I'm involved in a few of those too. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll get out of here. But thank you.
Thank you.
Isn't invoicing the worst?
No, like that's always one of the things that people
You
are
like that?
I don't. Well, I mean, one, it brings me money, so yes.
He's
but
automated in Python, so we can't do that.
yeah, I've automated most of it.
I just want to pay somebody to just do that.
See, I've got it down to a point where I probably spend 15 minutes a month.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I
So
built something that forced me, like if I created a work order, I'm tracking time on,
Mhm.
it will not let me create it or have time unless I tied it to an invoice. All the work is already on the invoice, so anything I do has to have a work order and it just automatically applies. So at the end of the month, it's really just like send.
Yeah.
And it's saving me.
I could tie things directly to like our time system, but unfortunately my staff will sometimes leave their timer running overnight. And so I have to go check it anyway, so it's not much harder for me to copy out 73 hours from the total than to bother to integrate it. Let me see if I can get this on the right screen here. Everybody ready? Okie dokie. Hi, I'm Frank Wiles. I started a company called REVSYS. We specialize in large, complicated web applications. I want to talk about software testing. It's not the sexiest of topics, but it's actually one of the most important things you can do to speed up your software development. So if you're working on a project, you're working at a company, and they're not doing automated testing, you should listen to this. I recently read a blog post that said that you should start off with what is it you're going to talk about, and then the why the hell should you listen to me. I've been a professional nerd for 27 years. I've run critical systems in data centers that I ran, data centers that other people ran in the cloud. I've been contributed to open source since the late 90s, sometimes critical open source. I've worked on hundreds of projects with over 100 different development teams. So I've seen what works and what doesn't work. I've worked on fun entertainment things, medical things, important infrastructure, and boring internal tools that just email a PDF to the CEO with last week's numbers. I've worked on larger, higher traffic stuff, more complicated stuff than most people I know. And this quote sums it up the best. An expert's somebody who's made every possible mistake in a narrow field of study. Me, that's me. I've forgotten to renew the DNS for a domain that hosted 30,000 people's email. I've deleted the production database. I've pulled the power cord on the wrong server at just the wrong time. I've double billed every customer twice. There's one thing that we can all agree on in this, is that whether we're working on our pet startup or an authentication flow at our boring corporate job, is we all have to test our software. There's really just one decision. Do we test it manually? Over and over and over and over again. Don't code angry. Or do we do it automatically? We've got all this immense computing power at our fingertips. We could have gone to the moon about 400 times on my watch, not even my laptop. I used to not write tests for my software. I was pretty late to the testing party, so learn from my mistakes. This is usually when the person I'm talking to pushes back and says, we'd love to do testing, but we really can't because, right? They're wrong. They're usually really wrong. But let's go through the main complaints that you tend to get. We don't have time to write tests. Actually, you don't have time not to write tests. Let's go through this a little quick example here of which is faster. Taking 10 or 15 minutes to write one test for the code that you just wrote while it's fresh in your mind, and have it run in about 10 milliseconds a few times a day when you rerun the tests for the next 5 years that your code's in production, or taking 5 minutes to manually retest that bit of code every single time you make a change to your code, which the honest answer is you're not going to manually test it again. You might occasionally think this bit that I'm changing here might break that other aspect, and so you go and you manually test that. But in reality, you're just leaving it up to chance, right? So at some point, it's going to fail, which means the customer's going to find it. They're going to report it to you. Somebody's going to take a couple minutes to create a Jira ticket. You or one of your coworkers is going to have to pick up that ticket, look at the code, get into the headspace of what that code means, find the bug, fix it, submit it for review, get the pull request merged, release it. There's probably going to be a meeting about it, right? Does that seem faster? It's really not. People also think it's really hard to write tests, and it doesn't have to be hard. In general, if it's hard to test your code, it's a good sign that you need to refactor your code to make it easier to test, one, but also it tends to make your code easier to maintain. I've yet to see a code base yet that you can't test. Yes, there are aspects that are harder to test than others, but at the very least, test the easy parts and leave the hard parts to chance, because that's really what you're doing, leaving it to chance. We're never going to get to 100% test coverage. The similar argument here is tests are never going to find all of our bugs, so what's the fucking point? Eating healthier isn't going to necessarily keep me from getting a heart attack, but that's not a reason to go on a 100% lard diet either. One test is better than no tests. 25% coverage is better than 0% coverage. And 100% shouldn't even be the goal. You can waste a lot of time trying to get to 100% test coverage, and that doesn't actually necessarily improve the resiliency of your software. I tend to have and ensure that we have higher test coverage on things that are more important. Can the user log in? Anything to do with money, right? Can they purchase? Are we doing the math and the money right? Probably not a lot of tests on the forgotten password flow, right? So you have to, budget your time, but you want tests everywhere. And so what do you test? Everything, it varies by project. I'm going to be talking about the popular Python testing framework called PyTest. There are a couple other testing frameworks. PyTest is by far the most popular. If you're doing JavaScript, you're going to be looking at Jest. If it's PHP, you're probably looking at Pest. If it's Rust, you're probably just using the built-in testing framework. But these ideas work the same in whatever language you're working in. The actual semantics may be a little bit different. Smoke tests. Smoke tests are where you should start. If you don't have any tests, write some smoke tests. They don't attempt to test everything. They're basically looking at it from the outside world. They're trying to catch big failures. So can I log in? Can I load the login page and get a 200? Can I load the home page and get a 200? Right? If I'm logged in as Susan, can I pull up the dashboard and get a 200? If I'm not logged in, can I still pull up the dashboard? Like, that's a bad idea, right? These are big, super quick wins. They cover large swaths of the code base, and it gives you some confidence that your changes are not breaking everything in your software. So this is an example of some smoke tests in PyTest. So each function that starts with test underscore is a discrete test. And any arguments to those, the client there, is pulling in some fixture from someplace else in your project. You don't really need to worry about where at this point, but we're just saying, hey, client, go get me the home page. Do I get status code 200, and does it say Frank Wiles Industry somewhere on the page? Test login. If I go to a /accounts login, do I get a 200? Does it say login somewhere on the page? This can catch dozens and dozens of different failures you're not even thinking about, like my database is down, or I choose the wrong password, or whatever is going on deep in your code, because if those 2 pages can't load, you know something's up. The idea is give you some smoke so that you know to go look for the fire. All right? Unit tests. These are usually the easiest to write, also usually the least valuable until they're not. A unit test is when you're deeply testing a very small bit of code. A single function, single class, single unit of business logic. So I created this silly example here that might be a little too small to read, but basically we're defining people. They have name and an age, and they like a team, either KU, K-State, or Missouri. And then we have this function that is, are they eligible, which does some silly comparisons there, like if they're from Missouri, they can be between 15 and 50 years old and be eligible. Otherwise, if they're less than 18, they're not eligible. If they're for K-State, they've got to be over 50, and if they're KU, they're eligible. Otherwise, you're not eligible. Just enough complication of logic that there's some edge cases there. We've got some less than, equal to stuff going on. It's real easy to make a mistake here and have it go unnoticed for months and months and months. So we can write some little tests. Test if somebody's underage. We create a person, age 17 from Missouri, they're eligible. KU, they're not eligible. Older people, if they like K-State and they can be over 52, they're not eligible again. And we can test every kind of permutation there. And as we find bugs, we can add a new test to make sure that we don't have that bug again. But this starts to get a little, and this is an example of what it looks like when it runs. In this case, we just have the 2 tests. But note, it runs in 0.14 seconds. I can't even say test in that amount of time, right? So this is definitely faster than manually going and trying all those different permutations. You can also run with PyTest get code coverage. So this says that we're covering 90% of this function. With those couple of tests that we wrote, we're covering 90% of the use cases. We can even get it to give us HTML output, and it'll even show us that these 2 lines here at the bottom that are in red are the 10% that we're not covering. And we could then go write tests to make sure that we check that logic. Oh, and this is what a failure looks like. So if I purposely put in a failure, it pops up and tells us, 1, that it failed, which test, what line it failed on, and then it shows us that a person age 45 with Team KSU is not eligible, and we thought it was eligible. It's really nice when you've had 75 failures in your 500 tests. You fix one thing, and 60 of them go away, and you're like, yes, and then you're almost done, right? It's a very good day when you've been fighting a bunch of those, and you get to see all green. But writing those individual functions gets old, so you can use something what's called parameterize. We can create test parameters. So we can define a bunch of permutations of what we're trying to do, and then the expected result. Find the people, expected result. We say, PyTest, we want to mark this as a parameterized, and we're going to take a person and the expected result and what the test data is, and then we can just say this person should be eligible based on the answer, and it just loops over all of them. And whichever one fails, It'll tell us which one of those failed. We don't have to try and guess. It'll say these 3 failed. And then we see that this one ran. This one had 5 tests instead of the 2 tests before, but also ran in 0.14 seconds. It does not get slow very fast. Most of that is actually discovering the tests because it walks the whole file system looking for files with tests in them. Another concept in this is fixtures. Fixtures are, in testing terminology, your test data. When most people think of fixtures, they think about a JSON file, a CSV file, maybe a dump of a production database from last March. But that's better than nothing, but they're not ideal because your data's shape changes over time. And when your data's shape changes, you have to go update those fixtures to match. And that gets really old, especially if you have hundreds and hundreds of fixtures. Or you have a very large production database, you have to take it out, so you've got to get somebody on the ops team to give you another copy. The thing that works better is to actually generate your test data dynamically at test time. So fixtures let you do this. We mark these 2 functions with PyTest fixture, so pass KU and fail KU, that generates what should be a passing KU test, or a passing KU case and a failing KU case. And then we can, in our test function, use those names as arguments, and it pulls those fixtures in. So the magic here is because we named this pass KU, just asking for pass KU in this test function pulls in that fixture. So we get this person with this name here, and that can happen from anywhere in your system. So it's pretty common for us to have fixtures all over the code base and use them in various tests in various aspects of the system. So naming your fixtures is kind of important, having some consistency there. But PyTest also works out the dependency tree for you. So you can have fixtures that depend on fixtures that depend on fixtures, and it will run them in the right order. And we'll even do things like not run, like let's say you're creating an administrator account. You can have it just create one for the entire run across thousands of tests, and not one every time you asked for it, which would get slow. So if we're pretending for a moment that we're building a point of sale system for pizza parlors, I'd probably want the following fixtures: a customer without any orders, a customer with a pending order, a customer with some old completed orders, a small 1-location pizza parlor that doesn't do delivery, a small one that does do delivery, a multi-location parlor with 2 managers, with managers defined at each location, an employee at each location, and you can build up what you need from there. Because then it's really easy to say, to your does delivery function, you ask for the location that doesn't do delivery, the location that does do delivery, one should say true and one should say false. But you only have to create that location once in your code and then reuse it across many tests. Integration tests, which is the next higher level of testing, sometimes called end-to-end tests, but don't get hung up on these names. Everybody calls them slightly different. You ask another person what's a unit and what's an integration, what's an end-to-end, they'll give you a slightly different answer. E to E. These sorts of tests ensure that your code is working from a larger, higher level perspective. If I initiate a wire transfer from account number 7 to account number 42, does it arrive in the defined 3-day time window, and are the amounts debited and credited correctly? Right? Something larger like that. So this would be an example of an integration test. We're pulling in account 1 and account 2 fixtures. We don't care really what their definition is for this. We're checking that account 1 has a balance of $200 and account 2 has a balance of 0. We're doing our wire transfer for $101.03. Now we're going and we're checking the database of transactions to see that we see this transaction in there. That's outside the function. We're testing this wire transfer function. So we're testing that once we've called that, a transaction exists in the database, because that should be one of the side effects of that. And then we're checking at the end that the balances have flipped the way they should. And this is basically testing wire transfer from an external perspective. Does that make sense? There's also a really great project called Playwright. Playwright is a browser testing framework from Microsoft. It's sort of the replacement for Puppeteer and Selenium, if you've heard of those. It's quite a bit easier to work with. So what I did this morning when I was finishing this slide was I pip installed Playwright, which installs it from the Python package index. Playwright installs the browsers that it uses. And then I said, Playwright code gen Lawrence Public Library. That launches me a browser that is recording my actions. So I went to this website and went into the search box and searched for William S. Burroughs, horribly misspelled. And I got no results. And then I cleared the search box and I put William S. Burroughs in spelled correctly, and it pulls up a list, and one of his books, Queer, was the top result, and I did that. And then it spit out this PyTest Playwright code for me that does that exactly. Launches a browser, goes to the website, waits for the website to load, found the HTML ID of the search entity for me. I didn't have to go view source and find that. And I get it by the label, enter search query, and I enter William S. Burroughs like he's a New York City borough. And I get the role button search, and I click it. And then I get a role, the thing that's called role heading, and I look for nothing found for William S., and I click that. Then I go back to enter the search, I type his name correctly, I get the button, I click search again, and I see that there is a bibliography title with this ID, and I click that, and I've verified that search works and that they probably need some better, slight misspelling options in the library search. You can use this to also automate things. It doesn't have to be just about testing. So we use this in a lot of cases to generate a PDF for a customer. Instead of using some PDF library, we build the web page that we want to see, and we launch Chrome and say save as PDF, and it saves us a perfect PDF of that page, and we don't have to mess around with PDF layout tools. We're also using this in a project to capture screen grabs of people's websites for archival purposes. So they enter the URL, we grab a copy of the HTML, we grab a copy of the text, and we grab a big screenshot just using Playwright, and that all is just automated, and no person has to go and create a screen grab and put it into the database. Hopefully this has sparked your interest in testing. My business partner Jacob has a great quote that says, "Code without tests is broken as designed," and I fully agree. So hopefully you will go forth and test more. Any questions?
I'm going to ask a question.
Okay.
So, I play the role of tech adjacent, right? I run a tech company, but I'm not a developer.
Right.
And we're kicking off, Rizwan joined my team. Found him at Launchpad and then recruited him.
Yes, ooh, I like that.
It's the way this should work.
That's
Yeah.
right. So, we literally just had a kickoff call the other day because we're building a new product now to automate the building of all these fancy little widgets. So I need a for dummies version of testing for the boss. What do I need to know to make sure? I mean, everything that you said is great, and it got me thinking a lot. Oh shit, we better be testing our stuff, or else this is going to break constantly. Not that I don't already know that, but it's a great reminder at just the right time.
Good.
So, do you have any recommended reading or 101 kind of things that I should go and pursue to make sure that we implement the right testing regimen? Or what should I be looking for as the guy who's ultimately, there's multiple levels. I'm sure our CTO is going to be all over it.
Most likely.
But I should also.
But you should be asking, are we doing automated testing? Because if you're not, then you should insist.
Then, like you said, by design, we're this is going to break.
It's going to break. Well, and it's mostly about the time to fix, right? It's good. We all know it's going to break. Nobody's ever written perfect software. We know it's going to break. It's going to break often. It's going to break in weird ways. And I might fix it today. He might fix it next week. We both might leave the company, and you bring on somebody else, and they make the same mistakes that we made, right, if there isn't automated tests. If we've put a test in there that ensures that when you wire transfer, the money goes in the right place, when somebody makes a change 4 years from now and screws it up, it bubbles up and they go, oh, geez, I need to at least go investigate. Why does this think this is wrong, right? I think the biggest things are asking what kind of coverage you have. This is the easiest from a businessy perspective. Ask what kind of coverage. One of the rules we tend to put into projects is we kind of initially test things and we go, okay, we're at 53%. So our only rule is the percentage can't go down. So if you add a bunch of code, you at least got to stay at 53, preferably go to 54 or 55, but you can't go down. If you see the coverage number drop, pull request denied, right? The other thing is every time there is a bug, customer reports something, you find something after all the testing's done, cool, let's go do this fix, and where is the test to make sure that we don't have that particular bug again? It won't always catch everything, but that starts you on the path of getting there, right? That's the kind of the couch to 5K way of getting there. And then once your team's really used to it, you just start to land with, okay, this is how we're going to test, this is what we're going to test, and we're going to start out at 90% coverage. Right.
I would just also add to this, and Frank already knows what I'm going to say because we had this conversation 2 weeks ago. I work with some really, really high-end, like senior developers. We have everything Frank has showed you. We have that times 10, and none of our developers QA anything that our customers see. I do that, and like, this is great, right? And this is gonna catch a lot of it. You should not be deploying anything in production for a paying client that you don't have somebody looking at. Physically pulling up a phone, like if you're doing ads on a phone, like I'm sure you're a great test writer, I'm sure all this stuff is work, but like you have to have somebody, especially if you're charging people money for this stuff, pull up a web browser, pull up a phone, make sure the buttons work. Like, and it doesn't need to be every single deployment. Like, I don't test every single day, right? That's what this stuff is for. But like, the way that we work is, okay, I changed something really big in our API. I changed a big feature. Like, we kind of, everyone communicates, and then I know, okay, we probably wrote tests for this, but like, this is too big. I'm gonna test our whole app. You know what I'm saying? So like, you kind of gotta work with your developers a little bit to know when there have been big enough changes that you actually need to have someone touch something. Because who you don't want finding this stuff is your paying clients. Like, especially in your industry and mine, like I can't have clients find bugs like this. Especially login stuff or really big pieces, like, you know, minor stuff.
But like, you know, you probably aren't checking the forgotten password flow on every list.
Forgotten password flow, but like we sell managed databases in the cloud, and if you can't make a new database, we don't make any money. So every single time we have a big feature deployment, I go in and make sure you can make a new database. I make sure that your backups work. You know, you'll have like whatever you're building will have some core components that kind of make it run and are like, you know, pieces that will bring your whole operation down from a business standpoint. Like, and that's all. I'm not trying to like put down under your test.
No, absolutely.
I've just been in enough development teams where the developers are overly confident about testing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they've spent so much time building it. Because they've done like what Frank has done, and they have, you know,
all the tests pass. Yeah, all the tests pass. Well, like, ship it. That's kind of like it works on my laptop, right? Like it's one step better than it works for me. But when she finds bugs, she turns them in, and those become new tests.
Correct.
So that theoretically, at some point in a theoretical future, she goes, wow, everything was just perfect. Or maybe 4 out of 5 deploys, she doesn't find anything.
Oh, that's totally true. And just imagine how many bugs I would find if we weren't testing.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that's the
every single one you would.
The other side of the point is, you know, if you find something, that's not a time to get frustrated with the testing. It's just imagine how much worse this would be if we didn't have testing.
And the Playwright tool also has features that can take screenshots. So, you know, if you want to do that, you can have your developers do that. You get in the GitHub repository, and you can look at the pages, and they can now put it in mobile, and they can put it output on.
Yeah, so like when they make a code change, like what you could have like 5 quintessential ad styles, right, that are part of the testing framework. And you could then take a screenshot desktop, take a screenshot mobile, and attach them to the test run, and you can just see what they look like. And you don't even have to fire each one up. I mean, your case is a little simpler than hers, right? And that doesn't test everything. It doesn't mean that the sliders work on the page necessarily, but you can at least visually see, okay, like, looks like it's the right font, it's the right colors, and it's not error or something.
And those can become artifacts you look back on. So if you look at a template and you say, wait, weren't these icons switched before or something like that? You can actually go back in time, get it's like a time machine. You can go back and look at the screenshot from 3 weeks ago and say, yeah, something happened. Somebody changed something, and this is not right. Let's get back in there and fix it or whatever. And also, you say, how do I know the tests are getting done? Like the biggest red flag is if a bug happens, and then 2 weeks later the same bug happens again. Okay, either the test isn't there, or either they're not writing tests for those bugs, or they're not writing them properly. Because that's the whole point, is that there's no regressions.
So I have a question. So I write the PyTest. So you talk about the
Mm-hmm.
Private, right? Okay. So I haven't used that. So that library of software is for the developer or for the tester? Because we are doing testing from a client side. We are going to the website. We are checking everything. So it's from the client side. But as a developer side, the what code you have written. So the test is coming. Is based on the testing we are doing on the website, not on the code we have written there.
Well, it's both. Like, I mean, so the first test I did, the smoke test, is simulating a browser and going to the page and seeing that it gets a status code 200, right? The next code I showed was like a deep function test, right? And then the playwright can do anything a browser can do, right? Like you can even just scroll down and see that an infinite scroll expands. Like you can do anything you can do in Chrome, right? And so you really want to be testing both sides on some level. Where you spend the most time would probably be where you start to generate the most bugs, right? Because really that's what development is bug generation. And so if you find that most of your bugs are in this area of code, one, that's usually a sign you need to refactor that code because it's too complicated in some way, or you wouldn't be creating those bugs as often anyway. But that's probably where you want most of your testing to happen, right? To cover that section of code. If this code basically never breaks, you probably don't need to spend a lot of time adding more and more tests to it. If this is always breaking, you want to be testing this stuff, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So using that tool after writing the test code is better, or doing the testing when you have not written any test, but just go ahead and
That's a lot of times personal preference. I do it both ways, and it kind of depends on the scenario. For the most part, I write my tests after the fact. But every now and again, I'll do it in advance. And sometimes if I'm working with a junior developer, I'll write the tests, and they'll write the code so that they know when they're done from my perspective, right? And we don't have to have a long conversation of here's all the 7 permutations I want you to handle. I'll kind of explain it, but I'll have tests that cover the shit I really care about. And if they get all green, they know they're done for some definition of done.
Yeah, the interesting thing is you, as a developer, can write perfect code, and operations upgrade the operating system, and a library changes,
Yep.
and all of a sudden your login doesn't work. That will give you a clue that, hey, it's really maybe not my code that broke it, maybe it was the update to the underlying OS that caused the problem. And that's much easier to troubleshoot and figure out than, hey, it just broke and we have, nothing changed.
Come on, I'm trying to, this is hard to do from the side here. Okay. So this is a medium-sized ed tech product, and you'll see that I've got 245 tests across all sorts of different software, and it just runs through them that fast. Like, it really doesn't slow you down. Every time I go to release this, I have a lot more confidence that the fix I just made didn't break something I didn't intend. Like Joe was saying,
if I upgrade a library from 1.0.3 to 1.0.4, shouldn't break anything. This helps ensure that it really didn't break anything. When I moved this from Python 3.8 to 3.11 without stopping at 3.9 and 3.10, I had a lot of confidence that this was going to work because 10% of these tests broke, and I fixed them, and then I was like, okay, I think I'm safe to just launch this without getting 4 humans to go through this really complicated ed tech scenario in a browser. Now, did the bug fall out of that still? Yeah, but it was and not 40, right? And like we were just saying, here is the list of all the Python dependencies. Oh, it's not going to show me that, but here is a list of all the Python dependencies for this project. Each one of these could break my code. Each one of those has usually 3 or 4 dependencies, right? The node modules on this project, there's like 1,800 libraries just because I'm using a lot of React. Like, that's a lot that I'm trusting that their stuff works, right? Hopefully they have tests on their tests, right? And that's the only reason any of this shit works, right? Is because of the amount of testing we all have.
Yeah, the alternate to this is never upgrade any of your libraries.
And writing it all yourself. Writing your own playwright because you don't trust Microsoft to do it.
So few libraries, that makes it really easy.
Yeah. I mean, there's only like 90,000 or something on PyPI. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions?
What are your thoughts on the importance of a QA environment for small projects starting out?
Small projects, probably not. Like, I usually have a dev environment and a prod environment.
Yeah, we're a small team and we don't have any customers yet, but
Then, yeah.
one developer is advocating for it, another developer saying more concentrate on automated tests, developer communication, stuff like that.
You want to have a spot where you can put it up and have somebody who's not a developer look at it, right? Send your mom to it. Mom, can you click through it and see?
The problem of pushing to production and stuff breaking all the time.
Yeah, so you want some sort of pre-production environment, right? Just so you can do that push and see if anything breaks, right? But some people go a little too far. They have dev, staging, QA, user acceptance testing, pre-prod, performance testing, then production.
Man, I wish.
And it's like, okay, so code I wrote in June is finally going to prod tomorrow, right? Like, that's too much usually.
You should have something that
Something.
simulates the production.
As close as you can make a copy of it without going overboard, because the other problem you tend to run into is like, production is 100 servers. Well, I don't want to pay for another 100 servers for my 2 users in QA, but you probably don't want it to be on a server. You probably want it on 2, just so you have to communicate between the 2 of them, because that rules out a whole class of bugs, right? But yeah, you definitely want some sort of environment where you can put the version that's going to go out tomorrow up for humans to touch in some way. What you call it doesn't matter.
A lot of differences between our local environments and what's like database migration.
Oh, yeah.
That broke a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
I was making database migrations and deleted a couple old ones in my local environment. I didn't know the production kept them all.
Yeah.
And they actually keep running every time you merge.
Yep.
So we fix that obstacles like that.
Yep. No, and that's why you would catch that in a pre-production environment, dev stage, prod, QA, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's always good to have one of those. The time you tend to want a third one is when you have like a dedicated QA person. That's their whole job is QA. Or you want to have the ability to demo new features to customers before you deploy it to production. You need a spot for there to be the very latest code that developers are working on that they can freely break all day. And then you want an environment that's stable enough that your QA person can work, or they can demo this to the client and not have it break on them randomly at 2:30 in the afternoon, right? You can just kind of say, hey, I'm demoing this afternoon. Don't put anything in the staging environment. Everybody's like, cool. And then nobody will touch staging all afternoon, and the demo you tested before lunch will work after lunch, right? But you might not be ready to put that in production yet. So you kind of need that third environment. But most people don't need any more than that.
Cool. Go ahead. Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Phil Mareu, and my talk is Walk Your Way to Tacos, Building a Health Conscious-ish Food Finder. I'm excited to be here for the first Saturday tech support. Mike, thank you for offering me this opportunity to give a talk. Like I said, my name is Phil Mareu. I'm a PHP Laravel developer. Laravel is a PHP framework, and it's something I switched to quite a while ago. My journey to become where I'm at today, I started coding in the late 80s or late 1900s for some of you younger folk. And my dad bought this TI-99. Has anyone ever seen one or used one? Yeah, this is what I learned to code on right here. It came with the book, started typing stuff, things happened on the screen. I fell in love, and it changed my life forever. So from that point, I just started doing a bunch of projects, writing games as a kid, just having a lot of fun, just doing side projects. But I didn't code professionally until 2007 when I graduated from KU with a degree in mechanical engineering. And there I used a product called MATLAB. Has anybody heard of MATLAB? Okay, yeah. So I was doing MATLAB programming, writing engineering code. But in the evening, I was really getting acquainted with web development. There were some meetup groups here, some good Django meetup groups here that I was hanging out with some very talented developers, and I started getting very interested in web development. So much so that 3 years later, in 2010, I started a web development company called Philsquare. Ran that for a little bit, had a daughter in 2018, and decided to go back and work into the full-time industry, get that insurance and steady paycheck. Grind of running your own business sometimes. But I did that for about 4.5 years across 4 jobs. And I'm going to switch my talk a little bit based on Frank's. During those 4 years and those 4 jobs, I was the only developer that wrote tests. And it was frustrating. I was going to talk about a different frustration, but I'm going to piggyback on that. And it was very frustrating. We don't have time, that whole thing. But yet they would have somebody that would spend days and days and days, every feature, walking through the whole application. And so it did not register with me. And I even worked for companies that wrote bank software. So it was really kind of mind-blowing. Anyway, so I'll leave it there. So after all this frustration, I decided in 2023 to rehydrate my company, Philsquare. And that gives me a good smiley face. Just real quick about my company. I started in 2010. It was a boutique web design development company. We did mainly website stuff. We focused on mobile, but eventually we started getting more sophisticated projects, started doing some app development stuff, and I discovered Laravel. I liked it quite a bit, and so in 2014 we switched to it 100%, just committed to it, which was quite the gamble for back then. And then now today, this is pretty much what I build. I build tools for businesses to help improve their workflows. When I say Excel, I'm sure you've seen every business use Excel to some sort of limit, and sometimes it's a lot of manual mistakes, a lot of copying over. Everyone I mentioned, not everyone, but most people know them too. So in this case, this brewery, this is in Kansas City, they have a lot of Excel spreadsheets that they're trying to track data. They're not even correlating some of it. Sometimes the beers are called different across different sheets. They're using sales data from Square and copying it over manually by hand to the sheets and stuff like that. So we use all the APIs, we take it, we aggregate it, and we put it in these admin tools and help improve their flows. Let's get started. So this project I'm going to talk about here is something I came up with 10 years ago. I don't know even what spawned it. But what sparked me to kind of start working on it is at the startup event that Douglas Core had a month ago. I was there helping out, and I was talking to some of the other volunteers, and I kind of pitched it to them, and they're like, that's kind of a good idea. And we started going back and forth some ideas. So I decided right there to whip out the laptop and just start getting something done with it. I was like, it's time. Let me try working on it. And let me go over what it is real quick, and I'll talk about kind of the pieces to building it. So what the idea is behind this little project is I'm at home and I want a Taco Supreme, but I got to earn that Taco Supreme. So I'm craving a Taco Supreme, and the idea is there's 3 locations that have Taco Supremes, let's say. And for me to earn it, I'm going to have to burn 190 calories. So what I want to be able to do is say, hey, there's 3 walking directions to go to each one of these taco locations. Which one is going to provide the calories I need there and back to burn off the craving and earn that Taco Supreme? As you can see here, I have 3 different paths, 170 calories, 240, and 320. Only 2 of these match. So what I want is a project where I can say, list me some cravings, I want this craving, show me the only ones that apply to where I can actually walk that direction and get that food. That's it. That's the project. So I'm at that hackathon, and I was like, okay, over time I've thought of like a million different things I could do with this project. Let me just distill that down into like the essential things. And sometimes when you have side projects, as many of us might have, you get overwhelmed about starting it because you want to do all these things. And this time I just really focused on bare minimum, not even thinking much about the UI. And here's what I came up with. I need a list of food with calories. That's obviously important, but I also need the location. So now I have these candidates, candidates of food for my ending locations. I also need a user interface for selection of food and the starting point. So now we have a starting point, but now we have all these candidates. So some of the challenges with this is, if you get a Lyft or an Uber, you know your starting point, you know your finishing point. Here, we've got to kind of transverse, these other locations and figure out what actually qualifies. It's a little bit more challenging. So I have a starting point and I have candidates for ending points. Well, I will need walking directions to figure out what those location or distances are. So I need to use a walking direction service. Get that measurement, convert that measurement to calories, and there's tools online. You give it your weight, walking pace, things like that. And again, this kind of ties into you can overcomplicate your project and not get it done. I said, you know what, just give me a number. I'll just pick some things and I can move forward with the project. So here it is. I'm just converting kilometers to calories with this number. And now I can match my calories to the calories of the food that I chose. And I can remove a filter out throughout the candidates, the ones that actually apply, and then show the user the results. So what I did at the meetup is I just used the same tool we use for our business dashboards, which just really, this is just a tool that provides forms and tables and stuff and maps to your data so you don't have to hand code all this stuff. And so here you can see I can populate all the data that I need for the food, the locations, restaurants, all that stuff over here on this panel over here. And then here I just made a page called Cravings, and I just say what food I want, give it a Latin lodge. So I just hand type the Latin lodge that I want in here and hit enter, and it shows me distance and the calories that I'd burned going to those distances. So I did that in about half an hour, I did that about 90 minutes, and I was pretty excited about it. I've got a list of calories, got a list of food, I'm hitting the map box, or I'm hitting a direction service, which is Mapbox API, and getting my data. So I'm going to talk about that just for a second, what I did. So I need a few things here to build this. I need a storage system, right, for the food, calories, so forth. So I'm going to use a database of some sort, SQLite. Postgres is what I use a majority for my projects, but anything works. And then I'm a Laravel developer, so I'm going to use Laravel. And that's going to be, we get the core, it's going to be help build out my services and APIs and so forth, and also connect all my packages together with the database. And then I'm going to use Filament, which is the dashboard tool I showed you earlier, which just builds out those interfaces. So pretty quickly, and then using Mapbox as well. So this is really all I used to kind of build that out. But my vision was always to have this on a map. I thought it'd be more interesting, obviously, on a map. But the map always got me in the way to start this project. Because if you've ever tried to build a map with pins and interact with it and do stuff, it's a little bit of a challenge. I mean, you can do it. I've built many projects using maps where you interact with it. I've even made one where hunters could put a pin on the map, select the pin, open it up, upload from their photo camera thing, the nature, onto the pin on the map. Crazy project. But it's a little bit more work. So in this case, I didn't do that. But after that weekend, I decided that I wanted to do a little bit more work on it. And so I spent another 5-10 hours from then and now to enhance it a little bit. So I'm going to introduce a couple new technologies. And if you haven't heard of these, it's fine. But I'm using Livewire Volt, which is a first-party package for Laravel. Anybody heard of Alpine.js, HTMX? Okay, so it's kind of a wrapper for that to help build interactive, reactive front-end interfaces. So I'm using that, and then I'm also using Tailwind CSS, which is just a CSS utility class framework for making it look good. Let's see. So let me introduce the project's called GeoNosh. Mike, you're going to have to help me with pronunciation. Kevin Meinershagen? Yep. Oh, yes. So Kevin Meinershagen, I met him also at the hackathon, and he just came up with that real quick. It's like, how about GeoNosh? I'm like, love it. Okay, I'm going to show you the first admin panel one. And let's see. Make this a little bigger, maybe. Come here. There we go. So okay there. Yeah. So this is, pretty simple cravings. It's like crispy taco. I've already just location in here. This is not really going to be that magical. But what it's doing behind the scenes is it's hitting map box to get the direction, the walking direction for all the candidates, and then it's showing me the ones that apply. So here it is, Taco John's, east and west location, and the calories. Kind of fun. However, this is even more fun. Interactive map where you can just hit your starting location, go over here, say tacos sound good. How about a crispy taco? Hits map box. I've got some pins here. There's 2 places. Nope, just one qualifies. I click on it, and it's telling me 922 calories. Can I get 2 of them? I think I can get 2 of them if I get there and back. So now I can restart if I want, new location or new type, taco. I would go to burgers, but I don't have that data in here actually. So Taco Supreme, I think we have more Taco Bell places in here. There it is. These are 2 locations. If I switch locations, so too close, for instance, if I start over here instead, do tacos, Taco Supreme, it's only going to show me that other one. That other one didn't qualify. There it is. So that's GeoNosh. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
What do you think is the next step for you?
Well, this is just a fun little side project, so it could sit here for a while. I might open source it. I don't know. But there is a lot of things. I have kind of a short list that I put together. Oops. So one, I talked about the settings of weight and speed. You know, you could increase that. Like if you're going to go faster or slower, you can change that. It'll just change the locations. Just the data alone, putting more locations in there. Part of that, the data is the tricky part, because if this only works in Lawrence. I have it, you can't go out too far. But if you made it where it just worked anywhere, you would use Google Maps services more likely. Figure out, Taco Bell, you just Google Taco Bell and you get the locations, and you figure hopefully you can get lat lunch from that. And now you can just like automatically map it to your data on the map. So you can make it a little bit more flexible and scale it. Here I'm manually putting the data in. So the other tricky thing is the calories. I have not done a ton of research on this, but I did a little bit trying to find like a API to get the calorie information from, and it's just not really there. You just got to skim the pages, stuff like that. So there's stuff like that. But just adjusting settings for the users so they can maybe save trips. So there's no authentication on this, just open, you just click on it. So, if I had an authentication layer, you could create an account, you could save trips and come back and say, remember it if you want. Show walking directions on the map. That's probably one of the next things I do. I think it'd be fun to actually see the walking directions on the map. So that's probably one of the next high priority things I'll do. And you could also say, hey, you know what? I do want to go to this location even though it's too short, and make me a route that just kind of,
I gotta go past it, and
yeah.
I'll pick up the taco on the way back.
Exactly. And I think Kevin brought up like, there could be landmarks, instead of just food. Like, I just want to burn 300 calories. Show me what I need to do, and you just like walk, and it's like these things are on the way based on interests that you put in, so that you can see where I'm going. There's a lot of things. Like I've been thinking about this a lot. So, yeah.
That is an awesome idea, because a lot of people here in the library love to walk, and we've had lots of talks. Like we had a display on walking.
Yeah.
And just ideas on how to get people interested in getting out and walking, and having like either monuments or pieces of art that you can do. You can do like an art walk, or you can do...
Yeah, and save your favorite walk, and also it could be tied into events. This is where it gets hard to scale it, because then you're tied into local events. But so if there's local events going on, it could be like, hey, I'll walk you past this. This thing is going on. It's Final Friday. So yeah, it's a... So this is kind of why I decided to kind of start it, because all these other ideas popped up, and I was like, yeah, okay, I can see that.
What gave you the idea in the first place?
I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I was eating too much Taco Bell, and I was like, if I'm going to eat this much, this much Taco Bell, I'm going to have to figure out, like how to burn it off. So I that would be my guess. But I remember it was probably about 10 years ago. I also don't think the API, the direction API, was as enjoyable as it is today. So I think that's another reason why I didn't do it soon. Yeah.
You could do all this without a mapping API too. Like you could just put all the geodata in your database directly. Did you come to the?
I did.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of options for mapping.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like
they're-
the APIs will get expensive.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
the,
Google
the-
API is gonna be
but you can
costly.
do routing with Postgres. Like you can just, it's an extension. of
Interesting.
Postgres.
Okay.
You can write their PG routing.
So how?
You can write the routes, and you can weight routes differently. There's all kinds of different logic you can write into
You
PG
should be able to
routing.
get a city overlay from the city, you'd be able to do Lawrence.
Oh, that's right, because you showed those
And you can
things.
get, you
Oh,
can
yeah,
get
yeah.
open street maps for
Oh,
Lawrence.
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can get
There are
overture
some
maps
free
for Lawrence
open
now.
source software mapping out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
And it's, it'll take the location from your phone, the location
Mhm.
that you're at, and you will have to preload it. It's not as interactive as Google Maps is.
Yeah.
The API isn't, but it will download it to your phone and present essentially walking directions.
Yeah.
And, go, to this corner, turn left, blah, blah, and it'll give you all the directions, and I don't think it would cost you
Mm-hmm.
nearly what Google's API mapping is gonna cost.
Yeah, it's expensive and it's limited to what I can hit it. So yeah, I mean those are really good ideas. And just thinking up here again with just, I really like building stuff, especially in Lawrence, just specific to Lawrence, and not think about, because I have other apps like a happy hour app. Like I just want to like map all the happy hours and just like that's pretty easy to track and just do it for Lawrence, and that's data you can maintain reasonably. Sometimes you can get the owners to kind of help out with that. So even like this, it's just like I know the monuments. If I have to hand type it in there or find those overlays and work on that, that would be that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I want to walk. I want to burn 300 calories. What should I do? And then it just like says you could do this and see 3 of these things, or the butterflies are around, so why don't you come this way? Yeah.
You can pull all the restaurants off of OpenStreetMap or something like that.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
not all in OpenStreetMap. Like it's OpenStreetMap.
And they change a lot here, so
This isn't downtown London. Like the OpenStreetMaps. There's some stuff. Have you guys seen Overture Maps yet?
No, I've not heard of that.
Oh, are you? Yeah, like that's a new, Amazon and Meta and Microsoft and everybody that's like not Google built a new mapping platform called Overture Maps, basically to like compete with Google Maps. That's, I don't know, like
It's just standardizing the open
yeah,
source.
and they're doing a
Yeah.
lot of like layers. They have like a whole building layer. Like they've got more stuff.
Is it using OpenStreet?
It is OpenStreetMaps is a piece of
Okay,
Overture Maps.
because that's what
Overture-
Mapbox uses. That's
Yeah,
what this
I'm
is.
sure,
Yeah. It's OpenStreet.
Have you created the Lawrence Happy Hour thing as well?
No.
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 I guess I was just wondering, like, if you're.
I talked about it like 6 months ago, and I just haven't.
Well, I was just thinking, like, if you're passionate about like Lawrence-based things, like
Yeah.
putting them all somewhere, and I don't know, it seems like a cool community repository
Yeah.
you end up with a handful of Lawrence-based things. It
Mhm.
just seems fun.
Yeah, I have others as well, but they are kind of based because I'm here, I'm out about a lot, and I can get the data. happy hours for me, like I go to happy hours, and I'm always interested, especially when the beer specials change and things like that. It's I'm always looking for a good deal, and I'm just like, there's not a lot of data with happy hour data. It's not like menu data, It's very finite. So
And it changes. I mean, it's not like you gather the
Yeah.
data once and it's set forever in gold.
yeah, but it doesn't change as
Same
bad
with
as like
restaurants.
a
Restaurants open and close
Exactly,
on
yeah.
a regular basis, so you've got to think about how am I going to keep this
Mhm.
database up.
I just go to every happy hour every week.
Maybe-
Simple. Challenge accepted.
You ready?
No, it's a combination of getting the ones that want to contribute and have it up to date, the ones that are okay with me calling them, and the ones that I actually go to. So doing that in composition, that's how I planned on maintaining that data. But that's why I like the happy hour, because it's like there's just a finite amount of happy hours in this town, like that, a reasonable amount. If they're not on there and this thing gains attraction, well, if it's not on here and it gains attraction, then there's somebody could reach out to me like, hey, we got a lot of people asking if we're on this app. And so that's the ultimate goal when I build stuff like this, is that like sometimes some of that takes care of itself, where it's just like they contact me. So
It seems like a great potential partnership with like Unmistakably Lawrence or whatever,
Mhm.
like a community builder fun thing.
Yeah.
Like, look at this box of cool
Have you
Lawrence
had
based.
good luck with them? Because I had an idea for them and they were not interested.
Well, I've never pitched anything.
Okay, I pitched an idea to them and it was like crickets.
Crickets. What did you pitch?
I pitched that we should have a list of restaurants, like all the restaurants in Lawrence, and like basically like eat at every restaurant in Lawrence, right? This isn't that big of a town. Like you could, in theory, how many restaurants are there?
Like a
300,
punch card,
400?
like,
Yeah.
all right.
And then that would be like, and then you would do it like, you know, however long it took
Yeah,
you, like
that's
a year or
right.
2 years, but like you got, you know, you
Yeah.
got something, and like as long as you had the list and a way to like go through and mark that you'd been to all of them.
What if Phil built it?
Yeah, I mean, they were just like not into it, and I'm like, I don't know why you're not into this. Like this
What
is
did they say?
Yeah, they just weren't interested.
For the local
Yeah,
restaurants and
I don't know. I was just curious if you
Yeah,
pitched to
no,
them
Yeah.
before, like.
No.
There's not a lot here, but there's changes and things that happen. I think that it's, to me, it seems like maybe it's more data than they want to like manage, because there has been other, you know, LJ World did it, and not so much a punch card, but like they try to maintain restaurant stuff, and that stuff just gets stale. And maybe they've just been, people have been burned from that.
Chamber might be interested.
Not to make it.
Put your name on it, right? Will and Django.
Not to make it sound like I drink a lot of beer, but I drink a lot of beer.
Back to the happy hour.
One of my favorite things that I've seen that's similar to that is in the Pacific Northwest. We were out there, and we go to breweries all the time, and we're out there traveling, and they had this really beautiful passport. And it had a map, and it had stamps. Every brewery you went to had like 7, or it had like 12. And if you got like 9 out of the 12, you got a commemorable glass, which I still have. And it's one of my favorite things, because I remember going through Oregon, traveling to different breweries in the mountains and stuff. It was really fun. And I am just blown away that is not done in more areas. I mean, it was just a real simple little brochure. It was, well illustrated. It was really pretty, but then like, yeah, you got this stamp, you know, you're out to the brewery and you got this stamp, right? You know, you could easily do that here with, you know, stuff like that. So
There's a yarn tour that does that, and I think there's a winery tour, and I think
Winery
it's-
makes sense,
there's
yeah.
a winery one that you can do.
yeah.
Did you say yarn?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have and they do a collectible stitch marker every
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. No, I dated someone that was,
That's good.
she was a knitter, and she was all about the yarn. Yeah, she get her in the yarn store, and it was, yeah. So I've seen it.
I'm on that yarn crawl every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's too much yarn in the last yarn.
No.
Well, great. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Thank you.